Okay, so when I want to start working on a new project, I typically clone Scaffold Bulma, which is an app that is very bare bones, but it contains styling with Bulma, the top bar styled with Bulma already, and it contains a connection to the database and login and logout, right? So what I consider to be the bare bones. So what I do here, I have this Scaffold Bulma app. I go to clone. Okay, I copy this URL. Okay, and then I go in Python Web. I go into the apps folder and I clone it, but I don't clone it into Scaffold Bulma, right? I want to give it another name, and so I can say, for example, example app. Okay, I'm not very full of fantasy, and so that's what I choose as name. So I cloned it, then I go into it. Okay, and so the problem is that if you are here, if you do git remote verbose, you will see that the remote URL, of course, the remote repository is still Scaffold Bulma, which is not what you want. Typically, you want to start building your own new app, okay? So what I do then is this. I say remove recursively anything in the git folder. So this essentially breaks the dependency from the Scaffold Bulma repository. Once I've cut this dependency, I initialize a new repository. Okay, I add everything in that application to the repository because I have already a gitignore file here. You see, I can say I can this file is already here. Okay, the gitignore. So I can simply say git add everything. Okay, git commit adding message is initial commit. Okay, and this adds everything to git locally. So if I do git remote verbose, it tells me that there is no remote repository. Great. So what do I do? Well, every one of you has an account on Bitbucket or GitHub or somewhere, right? And so I complained that my plus button disappeared. Oh my. Oh yes, it's because I'm not logged in here. So let me not try to log in here. Let me actually just drag there a window in which I am logged in. And here, this is my Python web system. So I can create a new repository. Okay, and I created a repository in the project that is Python web class, where I keep all my repositories for the class. It's gonna be public, and it's gonna be example app spring 2021. Okay, I don't even want to include neither a readme nor a gitignore because I don't want any content in the repository. I want to write it directly from my new repository locally to the one on the cloud. Okay, I don't want to clone the one on the cloud first. So I create a new repository. Okay, and the repository now gives me these instructions. I will copy them one by one so that I can show you what it is. But essentially, so these oops, okay, fine, it already did it, no harm. But this line adds this remote repository with the name origin. This name is completely arbitrary. I could have called it something like my nice repo or whatever other nickname I ever want, right? So, and by the way, you can add multiple remote repositories for a local repository, right? So that you can push to multiple places. And this is something that I do in the end quite often. For example, for my personal web page, I have 2 remote repositories. One on the Amazon cloud, to which I push when I want to publish changes to my personal homepage, and one on Bitbucket when I just want to do a backup. Okay, so it's quite quite common to do to use multiple repositories. So and then you say git push origin master. This pushes the branch, master branch on the origin repository. And because this is a very first push, I often use force, because sometimes these cloud providers insist in putting some content into their repository when you create it, because they try to be helpful, right, to beginners, and so they put a readme file and they put this stuff. But what I want to say here is no, none of that, please. I would just want to push what I have locally to your repository, and that be it, please. Thank you so much. And so I do it, and this has pushed it. Well, it's pushing it, I guess, right now. Yeah, not quite sure why it's taking a bit of time. Okay, but it did it. And so if I go back to the cloud, okay, to this repository, now it contains my application. So I haven't started doing anything at all, right? But I've started at least setting up so that I can do the future work. Because here I have now a Git repository with the remote properly set, Git remote v, with a remote properly set, an initial commit, all my code is in, and I can start working, say, on the homework. Okay? So I recommend that you do these whenever you start working on the homework. In particular, I give you the starter code for homework assignments, and you do the same. Instead of cloning from Scaffold Bulma, you clone from the starter code I give you, okay? Then again you repeat the steps. You delete the Git repository locally. You delete the .git directory contents, because you don't want to use my repository, right, to develop your code. And then you reinitialize it, and then you carry on. Okay? Now I want to show you an alternative way of doing this, just so that we practice more, okay? And then I can start editing, okay? So this is way number 1. Let me give you another way to do it, so that you also have a rewind and you can practice more. So there was in my history the clone of the repository. Here it is, okay? Example app 2, I call it. Not full of fantasy, but I just want a name to give you a second example of way to work, okay? So I clone it, and then I go into it. Example app 2. Okay, now that I am in it, I can do git remote verbose. Okay, and it tells me this. Great. Then I can again build a new repo. Bitbucket will kill me. Repository, and I say and I call it please. Example to delete. So I hopefully remember to delete it after the fact, okay? Because I don't want to have too many of them laying around. Okay, so now I have a new repository. And now I can, copy this URL of the repository. And I can do this, I can look at the remote, git remote v. So the remote that is called origin is my scaffold Bulma. And so I want to call it, instead of origin, I want to call it scaffold. Git remote rename origin scaffold. Okay, if I do now a git remote v, this tells me that the place from which I cloned the repository is now called scaffold. Ah, nice. Git remote add origin. What I will call origin from now on is, no, not this, is this URL. right? So that my repo, especially for this homework, is gonna be this. You see, now I'm working with the two different remote repositories. Git remote v. Okay, now there is a scaffold, which is the original scaffold, and there is origin, which is the main place where I will be working. And then I can simply do git push, or maybe with a force, because it's the very first push, origin master. And this does it. Okay, and so now, just as before in origin, if I refresh, no, because this is the old state, but if I refresh, here is my repo, and so here I have two repositories, right? And as long as I use these two remotes reasonably, anyway, you cannot push to my scaffold, so it will give you an error. But you can make a change and you can push to it. And now let me show you how. So if I am here, for example, this is my PyCharm, I can run the web server, hoping that I'm not already running it. Sorry, the startup becomes so slow because I have a lot of apps. But let me go into this app example app 2. Okay. Well, let me maybe open the. Let me open Py4Web, copy URL, and I open it there. Okay, I can go to the dashboard, and if I go to the dashboard, I can look at the installed applications, I can look at example app 2, I can look at the routes, and I can go to the index for controller, for example. And now it says hello, and then I can go here to the code of it, look at the controllers, okay, this simply does this, and I can edit this code if I want. For example, I can say message is equal to this is all a big mess. Okay, I don't know why, but and so if you go in the templates and you edit index now, you can say hello, and we can say is today's wisdom is, and insert here the message, okay, that comes from the controller. So let me see whether this works. I restart Py4Web. Okay, I keep an eye for errors at the bottom. I don't see any errors, so maybe it will work. Now I reload the page. Yes, it works. Okay, and once I'm done at the change, I go back here and I say, for example, git status, and it tells me, oh, I have two files that are modified. And so I typically do the commit using git commit add -a. This -a essentially adds any modified files to the new files that have to be committed. Git allows per se to cherry pick which files you actually want to commit. And these essentially will add all of them to be committed, okay, the modified files. Okay, so I always do these git commit -a -m added a small change as an example. Okay, I commit these, and now I have a master file. I have a master branch here, and I need to push it right to the remote repo. And I do git push origin master, and this will push it to the origin. I could write here instead of origin scaffold, and I would make a big mess actually, right? Because I would be overwriting the scaffold. But see, origin is my repository. Look at it. Origin is my repository, especially for the example to delete. Scaffold is a general scaffold. So you need to, if you have multiple remotes, you need to pay a little bit of attention to which one of those you have to push. But you can push to these, and I did it. And so if I go again in the Bitbucket, You know, here I can perhaps reload it. Okay, because it tells me added a small change as an example, right? This is a 55 seconds ago is the commit, and I can you know, go and see exactly what I changed, right? Obviously. And so this is the content of the file. One of the reasons I greatly prefer Bitbucket to GitHub is the following, that if you ever get confused about what's going on, you can always look at the commits, which is mind-boggling to me that GitHub omits from the web interface. But this shows me the history of what happens. Okay, so this tells you that on May 28 I built the general scaffold Bulma for using this class. 23 hours ago I made a change, and 1 minute ago I fixed it. You know, this is one of the preeminent reasons why I like Bitbucket, and I think that that is much nicer to use. And if I want to look at what I did in any one of these commits, I click on one of them, and voila, that's what I changed. This is simply a white space change. In fact, I think I can ignore white space if I want. So the whole thing I did is that I went from cookies to database for starting the session. Is there a desktop application like GitHub Desktop? I don't know, because I don't use GitHub Desktop. I actually like using the command line, but what I use if I wanna look at repositories more graphically locally is how is it called again? I use it every now and then. So I use two things in reality. One is by the authors of Bitbucket and can be used with any repository, and is called source tree, and I like it quite a bit. And the other thing that I use much more often is written by people working with Linus Torvalds, and is called GK. GK, I like it because it's super fast and super bare bones. So this is what GK looks like. I mean, it's a bit of a relic because it doesn't use the newest UIs, but it's one of the most powerful ways because of the search capabilities and all else it has available. Okay, so you can click on any revision, you can click difference from this to that, and you can see the difference. And I find that GitK is in the end it's like this plumber's wrench that will unscrew anything. So it's really sort of a bottom level tool that gives you the ability to do a lot of things that are made incredibly hard by other tools. For example, one of the things I love the most is that I think it happened to all of you that at some point you make a super silly error, and you say, oh, I just wish I never did this commit. I realize it's completely wrong-headed. Can I please go back, right? Or can I at least go back with one of my branches? And so if you really want to do things, you can right-click here and say, reset master branch here. And you can decide to do it hard, in which you discard all future changes. You know, it gives you these super powerful tools to sort of recover from errors, and the fact is that if you work, you will make errors, and so I think that I mean, my heart is with GitK, and that's what I use more often. Also, notice I mean, I'm not showing perhaps the right screen, but I don't, well, you cannot see the timing, but essentially GitK takes a fraction of a second to open. Whereas all the other tools, are these heavyweight monsters that need to take their own sweet time thinking about what they need to do in order to come up. Okay, and usually when I look at Git repositories, I don't have a lot of, patience in that moment. I usually do it because I'm trying to recover from some disaster. Okay, so that's a way in which you can start work. I gave you two possible ways. I want to now stop the recording. I gave you two possible ways One by cloning and redoing the Git repo from scratch, the other one by cloning and adding a new remote repository, okay? And then you can push to the remote cloud.